Here we go. Yes. Jen, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm muted. Sorry. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, no problem. I just want to start off by saying thank you for allocating your time to me. I really do appreciate it. Um, and I also,
Absolutely.
oh, thank you so much. And I also wanted to ask you, how are you and your family doing during these pandemic times?
Thanks. We're all doing well. Knock on wood. No one in my immediate family has gotten COVID yet, and slowly beginning to get vaccinated. No vaccine for me or anything, but my grandparents are slowly getting vaccinated, and my sister is a teacher and slowly getting vaccinated. So things are looking up. Still not awesome, but fortunate compared to everything else that could have happened for sure.
Yeah, yes, you can say that again. I'm happy to hear that for sure. None of my family either, or either, I should say, has caught COVID. And my aunt, my mom, and my uncle, they're all slated to get. They're going to take the vaccine whenever they possibly can. So that's for sure.
That's great.
Um, so I want to give you some background on me, and I also wanted to say why I reached out to you. Um, so I'm a senior in college. Excuse me, going to Kennesaw State University here in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a staff writer for our school's magazine. I am a sports co-host for the radio station. We have a sports show. I have covered high school football this past fall. I did 11 games, so I was writing recaps and everything. I'm also covering my first high school basketball playoff game this past Tuesday, and actually tonight at 5:30, I'm
Awesome.
going to be covering another game. So it's pretty cool. Um, I reached out to you because I saw that you were the managing editor and a contributor to I think 538, and I believe you do content as well. It was a no-brainer to talk to you because I wanted to hear some of your experiences, connect with you, hear about you, but also get some wisdom, some knowledge, maybe some pointers that you can share, and just like I said, be a sponge. That's what I wanted to be, and connect with you. And I was happy to send you the email because I was like, I definitely want to talk to Jen, and I hope that she replies back, and you did. So I'm blessed. I'm grateful that you did.
Always happy to pay it forward. I actually, so I work a day job that's not in sports, and our Friday afternoons have been like fairly chill in pandemic times, which is why I said Friday afternoons would be awesome. But I just gave some folks a heads up, like, don't call me at noon because I'm busy and I'm not going to answer you. But I was saying, this is kind of a treat. I don't normally get to, like, my normal Zoom calls are all really boring and I don't say a whole lot because I'm often one of the not senior members on the call. So this is a treat to have like a Zoom call that I actually was looking forward to.
Well, this is awesome. I'm glad you're looking forward to it. And listen, without any further ado, I'm gonna ask, what made you or inspired you to want to be in the sports media field?
Yeah, so I was a college athlete. I played sports growing up, like, have always been athletic and interested in sports, and watched sports even after I retired as a college athlete. Um, and I kind of just retired and got into like the normal working world. I never really thought of becoming a journalist. I was a psychology major in college, ended up going into education policy. Had thought about maybe teaching, but realized very quickly that I would burn out wrangling children all day, every day, and I was like, I can't do that. I'm
I
a,
feel you.
I'm an introvert, and I'm like, I can't. That's too many
Really? You seem so confident just talking right now. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but you just seem so wonderful talking right now. An
I
introvert?
mean, one-on-one is easy, but well,
Oh,
I
okay.
wouldn't say easy, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm pretty introverted. I recharge solo. But this sort of thing is a nice departure from my normal routine, I guess you could say, in quarantine. But yeah, so I got into education policy. I've worked as a research assistant in various jobs that you don't need to know about because they're not sports. So I've been doing that, as my day job, as my way to actually make money. Um, Fast forward to 2018, I was in a job that candidly I didn't like very much, and that most of the reason I didn't like it, at least part of the reason I didn't like it, is because I was super bored, to put it
Right.
bluntly. I was
Right.
super bored. I felt like I wasn't using my brain. I was like trying to get more projects and didn't have anything to do, and was kind of trying to fill the void without like working another job on the job, like, trying to find like reasonable ways of using my time that weren't like scrolling social media or like doing things that are
Wasting the day away. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I ended up getting into sports writing simply because I was like scrolling Twitter one night and saw a call for volunteers for her hoop stats, which I still write for today. Um, and so this is kind of what I alluded to about like me getting into this was like totally random. I'd seen a call for volunteers like 4 months earlier,
Yeah.
and I kind of said to myself, they don't want me. I didn't go to journalism school. I don't have a background in any of this. I'm just someone who like they'd asked for like people who could like write stories or do social, and like I did social for one of my jobs like without any training, but like I managed our Twitter for a couple of years. Like that's a long time. So the
Yeah.
second time I was like, you know what? I've seen it twice. I should like just like what's the worst that could happen? So I
Right.
like sent an email and was like, look, like I'm not a journalist, but like I love women's basketball, which is what you do. I'm really knowledgeable about it because I've been watching it since I was 12 years old, 10
Right.
years old.
Right.
Um, and I played through high school, but was terrible at it. But I'm like, look, I can write, I can do social, like, happy to help if you think there's like a spot for me. And Aaron, my boss there, was like, yeah, like, please come help us. Like, it doesn't pay, but like, we'd love to have you. And I was like, sure, like, why not try this? Because you know, in a boring job that didn't use my brain, I was like, well, now I can like write things and use my brain in that sort of way. So that's like kind of how I got into it. Then about 6 months later, Howard Megdal, who was then at High Post Hoops, is now the guy in charge. I don't know what his actual title is. The founder and main boss at the Next. He and I were just kind of like chatting on Twitter because he'd like written an article that was basically like similar to something I had thought about writing and didn't end up doing because like we all have too many ideas and not enough time. And so I
Right.
messaged him like we like knew of each other. We didn't really know each other, but I messaged him like, haha, like that's so funny. I thought about doing the same story, but you did it like 30 times better. So like hats off. Um, and from there he was like, hey, actually, like, do you want to come to what was then High Post Hoops and like write about like statsy things for us? Because for Hoop Stats, like I was writing a lot of statsy things, and that was kind of like a niche that not a lot of folks were in at the time. And
Yeah.
I was like, sure, like I've been enjoying this so far, like why not diversify a little bit? So that's how I got into that. And then a few months later for March Madness, 538 actually reached out to me again on Twitter. I didn't realize that all of my jobs have come from Twitter until right now.
Yeah, that's the new norm now.
Yeah, so I actually got a DM from an editor there who's no longer my editor, but I like thought it was spam at first. I was like, there's no way like some random guy from 538 like found me and like thinks I'm legit and like DM'd me.
Right.
Um, but he was like, will you do our like annual like have you seen like their models for the NCAA tournament and like predictions?
I have.
Yeah, they do like a simulation. So they wanted me to like they were gonna like give you the numbers and be like, can you write a preview show like saying like here's this region and like this is the favorite in this region, like with a 58% chance to advance or whatever. And so I was like, sure, like, kind of a one-time deal, and have kind of contributed to them intermittently since, not as frequently as the other two places, but I do like to write for them when I can. And it's so, like, that was a really long-winded explanation. Happy to go backward or forward as needed. But in general, I found that, like, while I'm now incredibly busy balancing all of these things with, like, oh yeah, I also have to work for like real money. Um, it's like nice to have that diversity of options to be able to, if 538 doesn't want something that I pitch them, then I know that it can find a home at her hoop stats or at the next, and vice versa for any of the others. And the editing for the next is relatively new. I started as a contributing editor last month, and then actually, like, last week just got promoted to managing editor, which
Okay.
I'm like, that was fast. So that starts actually next week. But they're basically similar. They're pretty similar. Managing editor is just more like strategic, almost like a vice president type of role instead of like a senior leadership role, is how I
Bro.
would equate it to like a business role.
Okay. No, that's what's up. That's one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to reach out as well, because it seems like you just work really hard. Because obviously you have a day job, but you're doing something that you love to do, which is right. And predominantly about women's basketball, because I too am a women's basketball fan. More probably WNBA, so college, but I'm definitely a women's basketball fan. Love Paige Breckers on UConn. Huge South Carolina fan with Don Staley as the head coach. Even though they got upset a couple weeks ago. Um,
I too love watching South Carolina.
yeah, yeah. So huge South Carolina fan for me personally. Baylor's always a team that's been great historically. So yeah, I definitely like this. I like women's basketball because it's really good basketball to watch. That's for sure. This question is, what is the most challenging thing about your job, but what is also the most rewarding thing about your job that you do?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to start with the most rewarding thing because that's easier in some ways. The most rewarding thing is that, um, women's basketball, the media coverage is not that large, right? So,
Right?
like, I frequently, this can be frustrating too, but I also find it rewarding in that when I'm writing a story, I know that, unless it's like, so it's actually funny. So right as we signed on, the Mystics sent out a press release that they've signed a player to an extension, and I'm the Mystics beat reporter for the next. So, like, breaking news, like, I'm gonna write that later today.
Right. That's
And so, like,
awesome.
those sorts of things, like, yeah, like a few other outlets will pick that up, and like there will be coverage. But for a lot of the stories that I do, if I don't write it, nobody else is gonna write it. And so that's frustrating on the one hand because we should have just as much coverage as for men's basketball or men's sports in general. Um, and we're trying to grow toward that. But it's rewarding also because I can tangibly see that I am moving the needle for coverage. And like I can see the contribution that I'm making, and I see, everyone like kind of laments Twitter, and like there are definitely some downsides of Twitter, but I find it really rewarding to just like engage with the women's basketball community there. And when like yesterday, like Natasha Cloud retweeted a tweet about a story that I wrote that featured her like fairly prominently, and I was like, you know what, like that like basic validation is nice from time to time, and like knowing that if I didn't write that story yesterday, it wasn't going to be written most likely. I
That's the
find
truth.
rewarding. um, Challenging, I think sometimes number one, the like trying to balance it with a day job and like trying to keep up with, like the Washington Post beat reporter for the Mystics, who also juggles a bunch of other things. He's not full-time on the Mystics, but like he is a full-time journalist. So that can be a little bit of a challenge, but is also something that pushes me to get better and to like I read all of his coverage of the Mystics, usually after I've written my own, and um, kind of see what I can learn from what he did. Like not treating it as gospel by any means, but like, Oh, isn't it interesting that like we were at the same press conference and I used this quote as my lead and he used it as his kicker or whatever.
Right, right.
Um, so I do a lot of that. And then I'd also say just like the infrastructure as far as like how access goes can be a little bit challenging. Like I don't feel like I think that the pandemic has actually made it better because now like everybody's on Zoom and so
Yes,
it's easier to like get to other places press conferences, but it can be challenging to like cover a new team or like get the different sports information directors at colleges or PR folks at teams like very wildly in terms of their effectiveness and like openness to doing things and just their like processes. So it feels a little bit patchwork at times, and you have to like navigate all of that. So those are like some challenges, but honestly I find it really rewarding, like all of it, like even when it's terrible.
challenging.
I
Yeah,
like I can see that, it's really never terrible. It's like I can't even think of a time that it was terrible. But like even when it's like I'm really frustrated and I have a bunch of writer's block, I
right,
like I feel confident that I'm like doing something meaningful.
right. No, that's pretty cool. I really like the rewarding part that you said, Jen, and that's because of the impact. The impact that the stories can have on athletes, on people that's reading it, and especially with you, because you're writing about a team that, like you said, doesn't get much shine. Outside of maybe Washington, they're not looked at, and even in Washington, they're probably not looked at a lot either. To be honest,
Yeah.
this is a team that just won just a couple years ago the WNBA Finals. So this is the team that just won that. With Christy Tolliver and Ella and El Don and Don. Is it Don Dale or Del Don? Del
Elena Deladon.
Elena Del Don. Yes, and Tolliver was on that team. I remember that. And that was a great team, and they just won the championship. So I definitely love the rewarding part that you said, and then the challenging part. It definitely makes sense too. Trying to juggle a day job. I work 84 hours every 2 weeks, working overnight for a lottery, and I am a staff writer trying to cover feature stories and philanthropy stories for our magazine, but I also try to do publications that I told you, covering games and stuff like that, and also have a part-time job where I work event security for our Kennesaw State sport games that we
Wow.
have. So yeah, I definitely understand the grind, and I definitely understand how hard it is. So I can relate to that. Um, this
I
next
will
question.
add too, like you mentioned the dearth of Mystics coverage. It's actually even worse on my college beat, which I kind of like did unofficially the past couple of years, but picked it up officially for the next. I cover the Ivy League, which includes my alma mater, and so like no one covers Ivy League women's basketball. Like no one.
I think the last team that made it was Princeton, if I'm not mistaken. Princeton made the tournament. Um, that was the last Ivy League team that I remember that made it.
Yeah,
So
Princeton and Penn have kind of been the top two for the better part of this decade, just kind of like trading off Princeton recently. But the conference as a whole is really strong. Last year, they were seventh in the RPI, like behind the Power Five and the Big East um, at the end of the season. So like they're like really getting better. I find it really rewarding to cover, but like every time I jump on the phone with say the Princeton coach, for example, who I talked to recently, or the Brown coach, who is new this year, but who I really love. Like they both like thank me profusely every time that I interview them for covering the league. And I'm like, I'm glad that you like don't look at getting on the phone with me as a chore, but like you really should not have to thank me this much because like we should have more people clamoring for your attention.
without question, it definitely needs to be more attention on women's basketball. There's some talented players out there, both collegiately and professionally. There's some great coaches in the collegiate ranks on the women's basketball team. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it all the time. And people say, well, there's nothing on. Well, what are you talking about? There's a women's basketball game on. My favorite player is Diana Taurasi. My second favorite player is Brianna Stewart. And if I had to name a third, it would probably be Candace Parker. And look at her; she's going home
Yeah.
to the Chicago Sky. So that's a great
Oh,
thing.
awesome.
So Yes.
And I love James Wade. James Wade is one of my favorite coaches in the W.
Yes.
He's just a really great human being.
Yes. He is a great coach. Although the previous coach I didn't mind either, which was
No, yeah,
Pokey Chapman was pretty good. It was pretty
yeah,
good.
yeah.
So but hey, James Wade is a gem. There's no question about that. So the next
This is a little bit of a sidebar, but my like amazing James Wade story is that like I talked to him in June 2019 for a story, like before a game we sat down for like tops 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Fast forward 3 months later, the next time that Chicago comes to DC, I'm like sitting like near the court, like waiting to talk to him when he arrives. And he like recognizes me, waves at me, motions me over, we chat, and he like references things that he told me in June. And I was like, how do you remember this conversation?
That's
Like,
awesome.
I mean, and I don't think it's like because I'm an amazing interviewer or anything like that. He's just like a genuinely wonderful person.
Nah, that's pretty cool. What that definitely means it goes back to the impact that we talked about. What you wrote, it stayed with him. He was able to remember you and build that kind of connection with you, and that's pretty dope. It really is. I like that. That's what's up.
So that was like my first season on the Mystics beat, like full time. So in June it was kind of like me getting my feet wet, and so like as basically a rookie, I was like, wow, I really appreciate that, particularly because like the next week, like Bill Lambier and the Aces were in town, and that was a little
Oh,
less
Lord.
friendly.
Yeah, I can just imagine how that was. Um, Although the Aces team is damn good,
I know.
I'm not a huge fan of Bill Lambier. Just not. But he got some monsters over there. That's for sure. And to think that they're that good without Kelsey playing, which is crazy. So yeah, Whew. That team's good. They're stacked. Um, so the next question I have is about uh, I lost my train of thought. Social life. So the reason why I ask this is because sometimes, with us doing multiple jobs and us in sports are nights and weekends, you don't particularly get to go out a whole lot because you're covering games, you're writing on games, you miss out on a lot of events, time with your friends, family, maybe significant others. For me, ever since I picked up my workload, it's been very tough for me to hang out with friends on a consistent basis. It's very hard for them to understand outside of the media realm and the journalistic realm that we don't work a conventional 9 to 5. It's not a corporate type of job. So some of them have really struggled to understand that, and I've had to kind of be like distance myself a little bit because this is an industry I really want to be in. So I say that to ask you, how do you balance your work life, your social life, and dating life, if you have any? Because I know I don't. My dating life is terrible. That's for sure.
Ditto. But
Right.
yeah, I feel like the pandemic has kind of like shaken everything up, but um, I think it's just like one of the things that I think I've really started to, I'm not sure I would say I've like developed this skill during the pandemic, because I would say that I did it before, but I've definitely become more aware of doing it during the pandemic, as like home and the office are the same place, and like it's harder to set boundaries as you need them. Just like I've become more aware of like being aware of how I'm doing mentally and emotionally and what I need. So like, the other night was a good example. I was like just really tired. I've been like pushing really hard, and like being able to distinguish like, oh, I'm like run of the mill tired and can push through and can do this, versus like, no, I'm like sputtering and like need to just like not write tonight and like go to bed. Like being able to like distinguish between like those two levels of fatigue, and like what those
Right.
feel like and what I need to do about them. Um, this was Wednesday night, I remember, because the US women's soccer team was playing, which is like appointment viewing for me. I love watching them. Um,
Right.
and an hour before the game, the Dartmouth coach announced that she was resigning. And so
Wow.
well, there's my newser that I need to write. But I told my boss, I was like, how about I get it to you for Friday? because I wanted to watch the game. I could have written, after the game, but
Right.
I was like, like I really need this like quiet night. And I like didn't need to tell him any of that. I just said like, how about Friday? And he's like, that's fine. Like you're good. Ended up getting it out last night. And it like worked out fine. But like just like in the past, I might have been like, okay, like guess I need to drop everything. And like sometimes I do, like with all due respect to the Ivy League, like this was not one of those times. This wasn't like Elena Deladon signs with Washington type of
Right.
deal. So just like being able to distinguish that, and then like knowing, when I need to, like I live alone, and so like during the pandemic, like knowing when I need to like see other humans in a safe way, like texting, like I actually moved during the pandemic to a new place, and like now I have a close friend who is actually like physically close as well. She's like 4 blocks away, which is a novel thing for me and really nice. And so like, earlier this week I texted her and I was like, hey, like when do you want to do our next socially distanced walk with your adorable puppy? Because like I could really use some like human and puppy time, one of these days, and would love
That's
to
awesome.
like
That's
catch
really
you
awesome.
and support you. So just like so that was a long answer, but I think like part of it is like being in tune with your own needs and like knowing when to put yourself first over the work. Like my boss at the Next is always encouraging us to like not cancel our workout to like deal with something else. Like obviously breaking news is one thing, but like consistently prioritize yourself and fit in what you need when you need it and fit everything else around that. Like it's kind of like the financial advice that people give to like pay yourself first and like put money in savings first and then like pay all your bills.
Yeah.
Like essentially the same thing, but with your emotional and physical and all other kinds of health.
Yeah, Jen, I think that's a really good answer that you gave. And the reason why I asked that question is because of burnout, mainly. You can kind of be going full speed ahead, writing articles almost every night, and then something comes up. And you just need a day to kind of wind down, kind of unwind, recharge the batteries, kind of like what you said. And I know for me, I had that time where my sports editor, as I told you, I did 11 games for football, and he wanted me to do more. And I'm like, man, it's only one football game a week. That means 11 weeks I was doing football. So it's like he gave me the night off, but then he would call me and say, somebody called out sick. Can you cover it? I'm like, yeah, okay, I got you. And then normally when you say that a couple of times, the sports editor calls you again and again. And it's like, all right, now you got to put your damn foot down and be like, hey, my man, I need a day off. Like, I just want to have a lazy day and do nothing. I just want to grab some cookies, watch the game, and whatever snack. I don't care what it is. I just want to watch the game and not be bothered.
Those
Um,
football games are long too.
yeah, they are. They're about at least 2.5 to 3 hours long. Some of them go quick because they do a running clock because that's because the team is up by so much. But when you are having those kind of games, it's like, sheesh. I mean, they're boring as hell because the team's getting their ass kicked. So it's like man. But at the same time, I understand totally what you're saying. Having that friend, having human interaction, having that puppy. I'm a dog lover, so I like dogs. I don't have any dogs right now, but I do like dogs, and I too live by myself, so I totally understand that. Just having that interaction, talking to somebody of some kind of normalcy. You know what I mean? During this pandemic time, is what you want to see. But that was a really good answer. I like that. I want to ask you this: what is your favorite like memory that you have in the industry thus far, and why?
I think my favorite memory would have to be covering the 2019 finals when the Mystics won the championship. It was just, I mean, I know that like the traditional advice is that you like can't be a fan and also a reporter, and like, I don't go out of my way to demonstrate like that I love the Mystics, but it's hard not to love the Mystics.
Right,
So, I don't tweet I love the Mystics, but like I was really happy that they won the championship. I would have been really sad if they'd lost.
right,
And so it was just a really amazing night, like both for the product on the court and just like what I saw like throughout. Like the stadium was packed. I mean, it's a small arena. It seats 4,300 or so, but
Is
it
it
was.
the Verizon Center? Is it the Verizon
No,
Center or no?
they moved to it's called the Entertainment and Sports Arena. It's new. It's now the Wizards practice facility, the G League team, the Go their arena, and then the Mystics arena and practice facility. It's very nice. I just wish they'd built it a little bit bigger, so that we could fit more people there. But it was so loud. I literally said to my colleague who was covering it with me, I said, like, it feels like the roof is going to literally pop off this building. Like, it was so loud.
That's awesome.
And like the Mystics fans like do swag surfing, which is just like, when you have that many people in that little of a space, like that loud and all swag surfing, and like I was watching from like the media in ESA were at like basically the top of the arena,
Right,
which isn't that high because it's not that big. So like the seats are still pretty good, but like
right.
looking down on this was just like an amazing, like that's kind of my memory is like seeing all the fans packed in there and like seeing the confetti come down and like seeing Elena Deladon and Natasha Cloud like just like hugging basically at center court as the
Absolutely.
last few seconds came off. And then, trying to get into the locker room, which is not very big to begin with, and was like covered in plastic wrap and champagne and, all of
That
that.
had to be fun.
Yeah, yeah. And then uh, yeah, thankfully somehow I had booked the day off of my day job the next day, not because of the finals, but because it was like the Friday before a Monday holiday, and I was like, you know what, I want a break, and it actually like worked out really nicely, so I wasn't like terribly worried about like how am I going to wake up for work in the morning, like all of that, which was
Absolutely.
good because it ended up being like a pretty late evening. But yeah, so like I remember too, like the players and the team left pretty quickly to like go celebrate on their own, like without the media. They did all their obligations and then they left. And the media were kind of the last ones there. And so I had actually, I live like it's like a hike from the stadium via public transit. I don't own a car, so I usually use public transit. But a colleague was like, you know what? I'm like going in your direction. Like, I'll drop you off. And I was like, thank you, because I don't want to, like, I'm not going to take the metro at this hour. It's like midnight. And I don't really want to pay for an Uber. So I appreciate that. And so she was like, yeah, just give me like 20 minutes to finish stuff up. And I was just kind of standing on the court with my boss, Howard, at the Next. And he and I were kind of just chatting, and I was like, this is pretty amazing. I'm like standing on a court that still has confetti on it. Like they're kind of starting to clean up, but it's like still got confetti on it. It's like quiet, everybody's left, and I'm like, wow, like they did this, and I covered almost every single home game the entire way, like in the building. Like this was an amazing season.
Yeah, that's definitely a great season for the Washington Mystics, that's for sure. And there's no way, if I was there or any other guy was there or person, colleague, there's no way we would have let you caught no Metro bus at midnight. That's for sure. That's
Yeah,
just
Myth
crazy. There's
Arena
no.
is like not in a great part of town either. So like I would have called an Uber, but it was not relevant. It actually like works out fairly well though, like not driving, because then I can
Yeah,
either start writing like on the metro or in the Uber. So like normally when it's like 10:30, it's like it's fine, but I'm like it's midnight.
yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's a bit late. You just never know.
Yeah. So
Plus
then
you
I
buy
went
your.
to bed and wrote the next morning because I am also not a night owl.
Oh, okay. See me. Me working overnight. I gotta be a night owl. So 'cause I'm up half the day. So I can understand that. I totally get that. I was actually in DC in 2019. My little brother, we were visiting him. He was doing an internship. Uh, well, actually, I would say not DC, but Baltimore, which is hell, pretty close.
You can take the MARC train. It counts.
Right, right. So we went to DC though. I'll tell you this before I get to the next question. We went to DC to see the Nationals play, and I remember I got tickets for my dad and everybody. We saw the Nationals play. Actually went to DC and saw the Nationals play the Royals, and had a pretty good time at that park. Park's a little smaller than ours out here, but it was still a good park. It was still all right. It was not bad. So um, I was thinking about getting Washington Mystics tickets because it was over the summertime that I came, but my family, they're not huge women basketball fans,
No,
unfortunately.
wow. I
Yeah.
found that when I take people, like, I before I started writing, I like tried to introduce my friends kind of like one by one. I was like, "Will you come with me?" And everybody was kind of like, "Okay," like more as like a chance to hang out than like actually.
Right. Watch
But
the
everyone was
game.
like, "Wow, that was really cool." And like, I don't know if anybody's been back since, but like,
Yeah.
it definitely like opened some eyes. Like, wow, like this is cool.
Yeah, it's a little different. It's a little different. It really is cool. I love DC area. I love the basketball, Wizards, Mystics, Capitals, Nationals. I just love sports in general. So any event that I can go to is pretty dope. Um, I asked you about your favorite memories, but now I'm going to ask you, what is an event that you would like to cover, but you simply haven't yet, and why?
Oh man. Well, the easy answer is the women's Final Four, which I was slated to cover last year, and then COVID.
Really? You going to come to Atlanta?
I would love to come to a women's Final Four or a men's. Honestly, I've been to a women's Final
Oh,
Four as a high schooler. It was in my hometown, and my dad and I went, which was amazing. Um,
okay. Okay. Actually, I got that wrong. I stand corrected. The men's Final Four was in Atlanta. I think the women's Final Four this year is in San Antonio. Is it in San
yeah,
Antonio this
last
year?
year was supposed to be in New Orleans. I've never been to New Orleans either, and was looking forward to that. But canceled that, canceled my trip to go to the Ivy League tournament, which was men's and women's in the same place, which is like pretty unique for college. Like same place, same time, like same dates. They do like quadruple headers and then like a double header because
Yeah,
it's four teams for each. And that was
absolutely.
supposed to be at my alma mater. And I was super excited and canceled that like 2 days before I left.
Oh,
So
okay.
thanks, COVID.
What's your alma mater? You don't mind me asking.
Yeah, I went to Harvard. I played
Oh,
for that.
you went to Harvard. Okay.
Did,
Oh,
yeah. So
that's
I was gonna
awesome.
I was gonna take the like easy JetBlue flight up to Boston and like bum around at some friends' houses for like 4 days.
That's awesome. No, I've never been to Boston.
Go in the
I
summer and it's awesome. Don't go in the winter.
yeah, I'm not a cold guy. I'm from California, so you could just tell I'm about sunshine, I'm about that. Even though I was born in Chicago and my mom and dad grew up in Chicago, I I only stayed there for like 2 years, and after that
I'm
I moved.
I'm from the St. Louis area, and my grandparents on my mom's side are in the Chicago area.
Oh, okay. Well, look at that. Fancy
So
that.
I did a lot of that drive from St. Louis to Chicago like every summer.
See, well, that is a great connection. That's a small world. What do you
Yeah.
think? That yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome that we have that in common. That Midwest connection. Um, for me, I would say Super Bowl Final Four for both men and women. Um, there's nothing like a March Madness. I don't care what anybody says. You know, you can talk college football playoffs and all that, but March Madness is serious. I mean, I don't know how this committee comes up with these games, with these 5-12s, these 13-4s. I don't know how they come up with these games. I really don't. These 11-6 matchups, but it's always an upset, and it's always a big upset in every single tournament, and it's crazy. I mean, I love it. I really do. I wish I was in Indianapolis this year for the men, since they're having fans there. That would have been dope. But I understand having it
Yeah.
there. So yeah,
A
that was
couple
dope.
years back, I went to the men's. I think it was Sweet 16, Elite Eight, one of those two rounds. Anyway, it was at Capital One Arena, and I bought a ticket like literally the day before, and I was literally in the top row of Capital One Arena, which I was like, this is awesome. Like no one can like kick my seat or like spill their drink on my head. Like there's nobody behind me. Like this is kind of great. But
That's what's up. I like that. You was in heaven with your seat. That's
yeah,
awesome. And
my
you
my
saw
dad was like laughing at me really hard. He's like, "Oh my god, like, can you see anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can see." Like, I was in like a corner, so I feel like the sight lines are better than like I could have gotten like closer, but like behind the basket, and I was like, I don't want to be behind the basket.
we don't want to be behind the basket.
Um,
Those are the worst seats ever, in my
yeah,
opinion.
Yeah,
but
mine too. So I was like, corner seat, awesome.
yeah, I like corner seats. I
My
do. I
dad was
wouldn't
like,
mind.
"You're so cheap." I'm like, "Dad, I'm not made of money here."
Right? I was like, yo, these tournament tickets cost a lot, especially when
I
we
was like,
started
"Are
talking
you?"
about Sweet 16. I
I was
mean,
like,
we're
"Are
already
you
2 rounds
kidding me?"
in.
But yeah, I can't wait until I am vaccinated and everyone else is vaccinated and we can go back to stadiums.
That would be awesome. That would be. So this next question that I have is about interviews. And the reason why I want to ask this question is because professors always talk about it's not about what you have, but it's also not just about what you have, but it's also about who you know. And for me, I go to sites like Teamwork Online, Work in Sports, Monster, Indeed, etc. I apply to these job postings where they have these job postings, and it feels like I'm sending my thing off into space because I don't know who the hell's gonna read it. I don't know if it's getting reviewed. I don't know none of that, or when it is. It feels like a lot of these companies, you know, or sites, you know, um, put their stuff up for legal purposes, and they put it up there with the intent of, well, we don't want to get sued, but they already have their candidate that they know they're going to hire. So I asked you, Jim, what is the best way to get an interview with companies? Is it going online, filling out applications, or is it talking with hiring directors, executive producers at newspapers, stations, affiliates, websites, or is it um, building a connection with talented professionals like yourself?
I mean, I wish I had more to offer you here, having not taken a more traditional path. I would say, I don't know how effective like the traditional routes are. I would encourage you to keep doing that, but I would also encourage you to keep building those connections organically, whether it's like through Twitter or other media, during COVID in particular. Um, and then I would also say, like, I'm sure you already do this, but just, every piece of content you put out is an audition in some respects, and just make sure that you are emphasizing quality over quantity as much as you can without, like, burning yourself out. You don't want to, sometimes things have deadlines and need to go up, and like you do the best you can in the constraints that you have, but like when possible, make every piece as good as you can, and promote yourself, whether it's on Twitter or however else you find effective, and start to build those relationships with folks in the sports and in the industries that you want to connect with. So I would say do a combination, of all of those strategies, and um, just keep pushing because it's hard for all of us out there.
No, I like that. I truly like that answer a lot. You gave some great answers, by the way, to every question that I've asked you, and I really do appreciate it. It's, like I said, I asked that question a lot because you just never know. Everybody's path is different. Everybody's journey is different. There's some people that went to the big leagues immediately. There's some people that never went to the big leagues. I didn't even know what the hell a small, medium, and large market was. All I ever heard small, medium, large was on the fast food menu. So I've never heard anything about markets. But apparently there is that when it comes to the market. So, I just wanted to ask that question and follow up with this question because I know you talk about putting content out. So as a writer, because I love to write as well, I love to write stories and recaps as well. How long does it take you when you have a topic in your mind? How long does it take you to write and complete
It varies. I could tell you it's a lot faster if I'm on deadline. Like for the Mystics, I typically have an end of night deadline for game stories, and
it?
so things go a
Okay.
lot faster that way.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I'm doing just a feature that I've thought of myself, so like I don't have to do a lot of pitching at the Next or at her Hoop Stats, which is a huge blessing. I do have to pitch for 538, but like for the Next, like I just do what I want on my beat, and
Okay.
they like it.
I
Like
like it. I
on my
like
week
it.
or off, I should say, because I have written some. Oh, I've written a lot of things that aren't related to the Mystics or the Ivy League. So, um, but to try to answer your question, honestly, I find that I always have too many ideas. Like I have a digital, like I keep like a note on my computer with ideas, and I will never humanly get to all of them. And honestly, like going back to when you asked me what a challenge is of being in this industry, like that is a big one for me too. Is like being okay with the fact that I am not physically capable of writing everything that I want to write. Like that is an ongoing struggle for me, and I'm always wishing I could do more. And, hopefully one day will come where my day job is writing about women's basketball and I get paid a livable wage to do that. But even when, let's say when, even when that day comes,
Right.
I am still not going to be able to write everything that I want to write. I'm still not going to be able to get that list down to 0 ideas or 10 ideas.
This
Like,
is true. This is true.
so yeah, so the thinking of the ideas is not the hard part for me at all. I have too many, which is funny because going back to when I first got in this industry for her hoop stats, one of the things that kind of aside, along with me being like, I don't know if they want me, like I'm not really qualified.
Right.
Part of my hesitation was also like, I'm gonna run out of ideas. I'm not gonna know what to write about. Like, and, I was kind of like, finally, I was like, I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. And like the
Right.
first story I wrote was about like my favorite Mystics player, not named Elena Deladon. And then I don't know exactly how I went from there, but I was like, all right, let's do this one first, and then we'll figure out what to write for the rest of time after that. And I like haven't had a problem since. So as far as like bad takes, like that's probably my worst. But to answer your actual question, I would say I'm trying to like quantify this. Um, like last weekend, I did the story that I was talking about earlier that Natasha Cloud retweeted. I did the interview for that earlier in the week, but I transcribed the interview and outlined it and wrote it over the weekend
Right.
in between doing like all my other stuff. And so it was about 90% done by the end of the weekend. And then, the team at Her Hoop Stats gave me some feedback and I edited, but and that was a 2,300 word story. So it was like pretty long. Ended up doing some extra. Um, I didn't talk to Natasha Cloud or Elena Deladon before the story because they are hard to get, but I knew that they were pertinent to the story and they'd actually done like some Instagram lives on the topic. So I ended up like listening to those and like listening to one with Christy Tolliver. And so that was like 2.5 hours of like listening to that audio. So that added to that as well. But so I would say probably it takes like maybe an hour for me to write it once the interviews are, or to outline it, sorry, to write to once the interviews are transcribed. And then
Right.
like, depends on the length of the story. But probably maybe like 4 hours in multiple chunks to draft a story of that length.
Yeah. 2,200 words. That's
Yeah.
quite a bit. Man.
My writing style, I'm not one of those people who like word vomits onto a page and then can clean up later. I am a little too OCD for that. So like I will write and like clean it up as I go, and I have a hard time. Dominoes the whole thing, and then I have to like fix everything else anyway. So I could like maybe write faster, like get a first draft faster if I just kind of like dumped it onto the page. But
Right. Right.
then my editing process would take longer, I would imagine. But I don't know.
Nah, that's what's up. I mean, I know for me personally, whenever I'm doing like staff magazine stories, I get a lot of writer's block. For me, I write and then I'll be like, uh oh, and I'll get a block, and then what I'll do 9 times out of 10, I know it's a little weird, but I'll eat a honey bun. So so I'll eat a honey bun and I'll have some apple juice. Those are two of my favorite things just in life. Period. Honey buns and apple juice. And I'll kind of just sit, and what I'll do is I'll read over what I already wrote or written, I should say, um, and then boom, the light goes on. 9 times out of 10, it normally works, and I get back to writing. And every time I feel like I have that block, I'll eat a honey bun and I'll get some apple juice. And I
I,
normally,
I I relate to that. I cannot at all work when I'm hungry. Like
uh,
it's basically like a police siren in my brain. It's like you're
right,
hungry. So
right.
like I don't know people. I don't understand people who can just like write for 6 hours and like not eat anything. Like
It's it's insane. It's
yeah.
insane. I'm telling you, Jim. That's crazy to me. But like I said, I'm a little crazy anyway, so it is what it is. I've accepted it, so it's all good. So I'm going to get you out of here on this. Um, this is advice. That's what this question is about. What is some advice that someone has either given you or you have allocated to someone about being in the sports media industry field as a journalist that you hold on dearly to?
Oh, I've gotten a lot of good advice. I've shared some, from Howard about like prioritizing yourself and your needs. So that's definitely one. But um, I think another lesson that Howard has shared in particular that um, comes off in many different ways and can be appropriated for different contexts is asking forgiveness and not permission, like being assertive and doing what you need, like, like respecting processes, but like don't wait for PR to get back to you if you have another way to ask someone if they want to talk to you.
Right,
Um, or like in an arena in particular, like you can't just like wait for people to come by. Like I mentioned to you that I'm an introvert and sometimes I struggle to just kind of like pull a player to the side because like in the back of my head I'm like, how many of them actually want to talk to the media anyway, and like what if they're in the middle of something? And so
right,
like, that makes me like very anxious, but like no one's going to do it for me.
right, right, right,
So that sort of thing, just I am always striving to uh, be as like advocating for myself and getting done what I need to get done in a respectful way that will not make PR people mad at me. Um, like I try to build up good relationships with them because they have a lot more access than I do, but
right.
sometimes they are not on my side.
Yeah, that's definitely, listen. They ain't on my side either, and that's on the collegiate side. These SIDs, sometimes when you email them, they take all damn day to get back to you. Sometimes we come to the game, and listen. I respect that they're busy. I respect that there's probably a plethora of things going on in their life. But at the same time, we are a conduit as the media uh, to get information out for people to read, for people to know. We are the middleman, is what we call it, between the players and the PRs. That's what we do. We write the stories, and people look at our stories and they go off what we write, what we say, what's being reported, and all this, that, and the third. So when you have that, you got to be able to say, okay, at some point the compromise has to happen, right? And for the most part, it does. But maybe sometimes they have a rough day, or maybe sometimes they're just being asshole like, and they just don't they don't want to do what they need to do. That's for sure.
And the other like piece of advice that I try to give people is like, again, within the limits of burnout, like none of us are superheroes, but like when you can, like try to read as much and as widely as you can, like other sports coverage, and learn from that and learn about the
Yeah,
industry. So like I listen to a lot of sports related podcasts. I actually like that's how I work out. I'm one of those like weird people who doesn't listen to music when I run. Um, because I actually find it too boring. Like my brain is like, I'm bored. Can I stop running now? I don't like running. But with podcasts, I have to like kind of engage with what they're telling me. So I have less room to be like, I hate this. This is dumb.
Wow,
Um,
wow. We have a lot of things in common because
yeah.
I
So
too listen to podcasts. I listen to Knuckleheads. I listen to all the Smoke podcasts. I listen to what's some other podcasts? Joe Rogan. I listened to his podcast before. Um, now there are times where I do have to put on my music to get me going a little bit. Mainly when I'm weightlifting. I like to lift. But when I'm running on a treadmill and doing steps, I like to listen to podcasts. I just
yeah,
like
I don't think I could do a podcast while weightlifting. I think I would be focusing too much on like form and stuff and not actually hear
exactly,
anything.
exactly. So that's why I got to turn up and be able to, play that music that gets me going. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's dope. Well, Jen, I am following you on Twitter. If you have an Instagram or a LinkedIn, I will follow you there as well. Um, those three sites I mentioned is the reason why I mentioned those because I use those main three. I would love for you to follow me back if possible. I would just love that. So just put it out there.
Yeah, my LinkedIn mostly has my like day job stuff. Like my sports writing is listed under like the volunteer section because I didn't have a good place to put it. But
Right.
like feel free to connect with me there. My Instagram I basically just use for personal stuff, and the Twitter is what I mainly use for basketball stuff.
Same here. No question about that. And I would love to connect with you on all three of those platforms. Two, since you're a writer, I'm a writer. I would love to send you some of my clips. I know that you can get busy, and at your earliest convenience, I would love for you to review those, and you can do what you would like to, bashing the hell if you want to. Constructive criticism is okay. I'm totally fine with that. But your expertise would be absolutely tremendous and well respected by me. So I would love that.
Sure.
And then two more things. The last thing is I'm going to be graduating in July of 2021, which is long overdue. No question about
Congratulations.
it. Thank you very much. Thank you. I am going to be applying all over the country. The Northeast is definitely an area I'm going to apply since my father lives there now. He lives in New York, which is he lives in upstate New York. And DC is going to be a place I'm going to apply. If you hear of anything as far as stations, affiliates, websites, newspapers, anything, and I don't see it as far as the posting goes or anything, don't be afraid to shoot it my way because I certainly will take a look at it.
You got it.
And then the last thing, I guess it's the AB. The last thing is I would drop you my contact. I would love for you to have my phone number. I would love to keep in contact with you. You seem like just a wonderful person to talk to. And yeah, I definitely love to keep in contact with you.
Sounds great.
I also ask you, is there anything else that you would like to add before we end the
Mhm.
film?
I don't think so, but I will say, if you hang up the phone and you're like, "Dang, I really meant to ask like
Right.
this one question," like just feel free to like DM me or email me, and I can answer that. Like no worries. We've all been there, right? When we get off an interview and we're like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like if this is one of those times, don't be shy about that.
I certainly will not, Jen. I certainly will keep thinking of possible questions to ask you. Uh, please, please don't be a stranger. Once again, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. And you just seem like an amazing person. And I'm looking forward to actually reading some more of your pieces that you write.
Well, thank you. And feedback can be a two-way street. So if you have any comments, I'm happy to hear those as well. But it's been great talking to you, and hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
And you too. And trust me, we will be in touch very soon. You take care.
All righty. Bye-bye.